Lyra stood on the observation deck of the Vorathan research outpost, her long, silvery hair catching the dim light of the nebula beyond the transparent walls. She had spent years studying the strange formations of stars, the colorful gas clouds, and the faint currents of cosmic energy that danced across the universe. The nebula she now observed was known as Voritha's Dream, a vast cloud of swirling colors and hidden mysteries. But tonight, something else occupied her mind. The humans had arrived. For decades, the Vorathans had only heard rumors about humanity, the warm-blooded species that explored the stars with boldness and curiosity. They were said to take risks no other species dared, to survive in places that should have been impossible, and to possess a kind of emotional strength that the Vorathans only observed from afar. Now, a human ship had crossed the edge of their nebula, and Lyra's team had been assigned to monitor it. Lyra adjusted the control panel before her, her hands moving with precision honed by years of research. She checked the ship's signature, Hope Walker, a small exploration vessel designed for deep space travel. The Vorathans had expected a cautious approach, but the humans had entered the nebula without hesitation. It was reckless, even by human standards. "Do you really think they will survive the storms of this region?" one of her colleagues asked, a fellow researcher named Ziri. His tone was skeptical, but not without admiration. "They survive because they do not fear the unknown," Lyra said quietly, almost to herself. Her eyes followed the flicker of the human ship through the gas clouds. "We cannot imagine their courage. It is not just bravery, it is something deeper." Ziri frowned. "You sound almost fascinated." "I am," she admitted, "and curious. There is something about them that is different from any species we have ever studied. Their emotions are stronger, more open. They risk themselves for each other in ways our laws forbid, and yet they survive." The Vorathan Council had strict rules. Physical contact with another species was prohibited. The Council believed that touching a foreign species could mix energies in unpredictable ways, sometimes even dangerous ways. No one knew exactly why the law existed, but it was ancient, and no one dared challenge it, not even Lyra. Her communicator buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. A message from the outpost commander appeared on her screen. "Human shuttle detected. Emergency landing. Coordinates sent. Immediate assistance required." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Human ships rarely landed in the nebula unless necessary. She activated her emergency shuttle and prepared for departure. The shuttle's engines hummed as it moved through the thick clouds, visibility low and turbulence high. She could see the human shuttle now, spinning slightly as it struggled against the gravitational currents of the nebula. It was small, no larger than a Vorathan scout ship, and it bore visible damage from the storms. Lyra approached cautiously, scanning for life signs. One human signal remained active. The shuttle had crashed near a ridge of crystalline rock formations. Her landing gear touched down on uneven ground, and she leaped out to assess the situation. The human lay on the ground, barely conscious. His suit was torn in places, and his helmet had cracked slightly. He was alive, but only just. His hair was dark, and his skin had a warmth that seemed almost tangible, even through his protective suit. Lyra knelt beside him, her mind racing. She knew the law forbade her from touching him, but if she did not act quickly, he would not survive. His life depended on her actions. Instinct overcame protocol. She reached out her hand. The moment her fingers brushed his palm, a wave of energy pulsed through her. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Warmth, curiosity, fear, and courage all mingled together in a sensation that left her breathless. Above them, the stars shifted. Colors she had studied for years suddenly swirled into new patterns. The familiar violet and gold streaks of the nebula twisted into spirals, moving in harmony with the tiny pulse of energy she felt from the human. Lyra's eyes widened in awe. She looked up and saw the sky above her alive with motion, as if the universe itself was reacting to a single, simple touch. The human's eyes fluttered open, and he looked at her with confusion and fear. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I am Lyra," she said softly, keeping her hand lightly on his. "I am here to help you." He tried to move, but the pain in his body forced him to lie still. His gaze followed hers to the sky. "The stars. They're different. Have you seen this before?" Lyra shook her head. "Never like this." She felt something unexplainable stir inside her chest. This human, this being so different from her people, had caused a shift in the stars with nothing more than a touch. She could not deny it. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the hum of her shuttle engines and the crackle of the nebula's currents. Slowly, the human began to regain strength. Lyra used her knowledge of medical techniques to stabilize him. She worked quickly, her mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. She knew she would have to report the incident to the council. She also knew the consequences could be severe. But as she looked into the human's eyes, she realized that no law could explain what had just occurred. No rule could contain the connection they now shared. The human finally spoke again, his voice steadier. "Why did you help me?" Lyra hesitated. "Because I could not let you die. It was not a choice. I felt I had to." He studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Then we're in this together, I suppose." For a long moment, they simply looked at the sky. The stars continued to shift, glowing with new colors that no Vorathon had recorded before. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and terrifying all at once. Lyra felt a strange bond forming, something that went beyond words or understanding. She could sense a faint echo of the human's thoughts, his determination, his hope, and his curiosity. It was not invasive. It was a connection, subtle and profound. She realized that the ancient laws might have been written out of fear, not wisdom. Humanity's touch, their courage, their willingness to risk themselves for others, it was not a threat. It was a gift. The human shifted slightly, still weak, but his eyes sparkled with something that caught her off guard. A smile. "I don't know what just happened," he said, "but I think something changed." "Yes," Lyra whispered, still holding his hand lightly. "Something changed." In that moment, the universe seemed to pause. The currents of cosmic energy around them pulsed gently, as if acknowledging the connection. The colors in the sky swirled together, blending into shapes and patterns that defied explanation. It was as if the stars themselves had recognized the significance of a single, simple act of courage and care. Lyra knew this event would change everything, not just for her or for this human, but for the entire nebula, for her people, and perhaps for the universe itself. But there was no time to dwell on the magnitude of it. She had to get the human to safety, back to her outpost where she could monitor his recovery. She helped him into her shuttle, keeping her hand on his arm to guide him. Every movement sent tiny ripples of energy across the nebula, subtle but undeniable. As the shuttle lifted off, the stars above them continued to shift and glow. Lyra could feel the human's presence beside her, not just his body, but something more profound. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one truth. One touch had changed the stars, and perhaps in time it would change much more than that. She glanced at the human, who now seemed more aware, more alive than before. "Do you feel it?" she asked. He nodded. "I think I do. Whatever this is, I've never felt anything like it." The shuttle soared through the nebula, carrying them away from the ridge where they had first met. Below them, the crystalline rocks sparkled faintly, catching the light from the shifting stars. Somewhere deep in the nebula, Unseen currents of energy began to settle into new patterns, patterns that seemed to hint at possibilities no one had imagined. Lyra's mind was full of questions, but one stood out above all others. What had they just done? Had they caused something dangerous? Or had they unlocked something incredible? The human reached out, and this time, Lyra did not hesitate. Their hands met again, not out of necessity, but out of choice. The energy flowed between them more gently now, a quiet acknowledgement of connection. It was a fragile thing, new and untested, but powerful in its simplicity. And for the first time in her life, Lyra felt that the universe was not a distant, untouchable thing. It was alive, aware, and perhaps even capable of responding to courage, hope, and care. The stars above shifted once more, glowing with colors that had no names, painting a path forward that neither human nor Vorathan could have predicted. Somewhere in the endless reaches of space, a story had begun, one that would ripple across the galaxies, changing minds, hearts, and perhaps even the stars themselves. Lyra and the human looked at each other, each understanding without words that this was only the beginning. And as the shuttle vanished into the glowing currents of the nebula, one simple truth remained. A single touch had changed everything. Lyra sat beside the human in the small medical bay of the outpost, watching as his breathing slowly returned to normal. The subtle hum of the machinery around them seemed to echo the rhythm of the nebula outside. The stars continued to shimmer in colors she had never seen before. Hues that twisted and danced like living things. She still could not believe what had happened. One touch, one fleeting moment had shifted the stars themselves. The human stirred, blinking his dark eyes as they adjusted to the soft light. "Where am I?" he asked quietly, his voice weak but steady. "You are safe," Lyra replied. "This is a Vorathan research outpost. You crashed nearby." She hesitated, unsure how much to tell him. The laws of her people forbade touching another species, and yet here they were. "You were in danger," she added softly. "I had to help you." He sat up slowly, testing his strength. "I remember the crash, the turbulence, and then your hand. It felt strange, like more than just warmth. Like something inside me woke up." Lyra nodded, feeling a ripple of the same sensation. She had felt it too, the human energy, raw and powerful, mingling with her own. It was subtle, gentle, yet unmistakable. She could sense his courage, his hope, even the faint threads of his curiosity. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. "Do your people often break laws to save lives?" the human asked, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Lyra shook her head. "No, never. Laws are very strict. Touching another species, it is forbidden. It can cause unpredictable effects. But I could not leave you. You were dying." The human studied her closely. "You didn't hesitate. That's brave or foolish. Maybe both." He laughed quietly, a sound that made the room feel warmer. Lyra felt a pang of something unfamiliar, an echo of the human's emotion. She looked away, embarrassed. Her species valued logic over feeling, caution over impulsive action, and yet here she was, drawn to a human in a way she could not explain. Outside, the nebula continued its transformation. The stars shifted in flowing patterns of violet, gold, and silver stretching across the horizon. Lyra's instruments recorded the changes, but the readings made no sense. Energy levels surged and fell in cycles that defied known cosmic laws. It was as if the universe itself were responding to something small and human-sized. The human leaned back against the bed, his gaze fixed on the window. "The stars, they're changing, aren't they?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra said softly. "I've never seen anything like it, and it started the moment I touched your hand. He turned to her, curiosity shining in his eyes. You felt it too? She nodded. Yes, I can feel parts of you, your courage, your hope, something I cannot describe. It is not dangerous, but it is very strong. He smiled again, more genuinely this time. Then maybe it wasn't just the stars that changed. Maybe we did too. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. That idea was frightening, and yet exhilarating. Could one human and one Vorathan truly influence the universe in such a profound way? She had always believed that the stars were distant and untouchable, beyond the reach of any being. Now she was beginning to question everything she had learned. The silence in the room was broken by a sudden alert from the outpost's communications console. Red lights flashed, accompanied by a series of urgent tones. Lyra rushed over, her mind racing. "Report!" she called. A holographic display popped up, showing multiple star systems across the nebula. Energy readings were spiking, patterns shifting in ways no sensor had ever recorded. The stars' colors had begun to spread beyond the immediate area, forming spirals and arcs that stretched across light years. Ziri's voice came through the communicator, tense and cautious. "Lyra, what is happening? The energy surges. They are unprecedented. Entire star systems are showing fluctuations. This could be catastrophic." Lyra took a deep breath. "It is not catastrophic," she said, her voice steady despite her inner worry. "It is new. It is a response. The energy is reacting to us, to him." She glanced at the human who was now sitting up, rubbing his arm where she had held his hand. Ziri's skepticism was palpable even through the communicator. "Us? You mean the human? How is that possible?" "I do not know," Lyra admitted. "But I felt it. When I touched his hand, the stars shifted. Something inside the nebula responded. We need to study it carefully before taking action." The human tilted his head, intrigued. "You mean my hand did this?" Lyra shook her head. "Not just your hand. Something about your species, something in your energy. I cannot explain it fully, but the universe, it reacted to us, to our connection." He leaned back, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "So, the legends about your people, the warnings about touching others, they might not be the whole truth." Lyra frowned. "Legends are often based on fear. Our laws are based on caution. But this is something different. Something we were not meant to understand. Until now." The human stood despite his weakened state. "Then we should explore it. Carefully, yes. But explore it. If what you say is true, this could change everything." Lyra hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. Her people had strict rules. Breaking them could mean exile, or worse. But the human was right. This was too important to ignore. She helped him to a window seat, allowing him to observe the stars. "Look," she said softly. "Do you see how they move? How the colors shift?" He nodded. "It's beautiful. Like the universe is alive. But I can feel it too. The energy, the connection. It's like the stars themselves are aware of us." For hours, they studied the changes together. Lyra recorded data, analyzed the energy pulses, and documented the star patterns. The human, though inexperienced in Vorathan science, offered insights based on instinct and observation. His perspective was strange, unrefined, yet profoundly insightful. "You see patterns differently," Lyra said finally. "Your mind, it is open to possibilities we often dismiss. You notice things we overlook because we are too cautious." He smiled. "That's humanity, I guess. We take risks, notice the unexpected, and hope we survive to tell the story." She felt a warmth at his words. His energy seemed to resonate with her own. forming subtle currents of understanding. She could sense his determination, his empathy, and his courage. It was not overwhelming, but persistent, like a quiet pulse through the universe itself. Days passed, and the nebula continued to shift. Word of the energy surges reached the Vorathan Council. Officials demanded immediate explanations, sending a delegation to the outpost. Lyra knew that discovery could lead to questions she might not be ready to answer. "They will suspect the human," Ziri warned. "The Council does not tolerate contact with other species. If they find out what happened..." Lyra's stomach tightened. She knew the consequences could be severe, yet hiding the truth seemed impossible. The stars were changing in ways that could not be ignored. "We must be careful," she said, "but we cannot ignore what is happening. This is bigger than any law." The human approached her, his eyes filled with curiosity and a quiet determination. "Do you think they will understand?" he asked. "I do not know," Lyra admitted, "but perhaps we can show them. Show them that what is happening is not dangerous, that it is a gift." He nodded. "Then we should try. Together." Over the next few days, they worked side by side. The human offered practical ideas based on intuition, while Lyra applied her technical knowledge to test and measure the energy patterns. Slowly, they began to understand the connection between their species and the nebula. The energy surges were not random. They responded to emotional resonance, to courage, empathy, and hope. Every time Lyra and the human interacted, even subtly, the stars shifted, brightened, or changed color. It was as if the universe itself recognized their collaboration. One evening, as they recorded data, the human looked at her with a mixture of awe and wonder. This could change how your people see us, how all species see the universe. If we understand it, if we share it, it could be the beginning of something new." Lyra nodded, feeling the truth of his words deep within her. The connection they had formed was more than physical. It was emotional, spiritual, even cosmic. She had always believed the stars were untouchable. But now she realized they could respond to understanding, to empathy, to connection. And in that moment, she understood something else. This human, this being so different from her own people, was not just an explorer of space. He was an explorer of hearts, of courage, of possibility. And in touching him, she had touched the universe itself. As night fell over the outpost, the nebula glowed with patterns of violet, gold, and silver. The human and Lyra sat together, silent, observing the living sky. The connection between them pulsed gently, a quiet harmony that seemed to echo across light years. Neither spoke for a long time. Words were unnecessary. They both understood the significance of what had begun. One touch had sparked a change, subtle but profound, and as the stars continued to shift, a new awareness spread through the nebula. It was the beginning of something extraordinary, something that neither species could fully comprehend. But they would explore it together, cautiously yet courageously, for the universe itself had opened a new path, and it began with the simple act of connection between a human and a Vorathan. And though they did not yet know what the future held, one thing was certain. Their bond had already changed the stars, and the universe would never be the same. Lyra watched the stars shift from the observation deck, the nebula glowing with colors she could not name. The energy pulses that had begun with a single touch were now spreading across the region. Patterns formed and reformed, stretching across light years, as if the universe itself were alive and responding. She could feel the subtle hum of the human's energy nearby, intertwined with her own. Every glance, every small movement seemed to influence the shifting cosmos. But not everyone saw this as a wonder. The Vorathan Council had received reports of the unusual energy surges. Their advisors had scanned the nebula, detecting fluctuations far beyond normal cosmic activity. Fear had quickly replaced curiosity. The Council believed that such disturbances could threaten the safety of entire star systems. They demanded immediate answers, and Lyra knew she was at the center of it. Her communicator buzzed. Ziri's face appeared tense and anxious. Lyra, the Council is sending a delegation to your outpost. They want you to explain these readings immediately. They will not accept excuses. They are prepared to punish anyone responsible. Lyra's heart tightened. I understand, she replied. But punishment will not explain what is happening. The energy is responding to something beyond our laws. I will try to show them, but we must be careful. The human, Jace, had been observing her silently. He finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. We cannot hide this. If they come, we need to show them the truth. That this is not a danger, that what is happening can be understood. Lyra hesitated. Fear clawed at her chest. Breaking Vorathan laws could mean exile or worse. Yet she knew he was right. The energy in the nebula was not a threat. It was a gift. It was proof that connection, empathy, and courage could resonate across the universe. When the Council delegation arrived, their arrival was dramatic. Ships of sleek silver descended toward the outpost, carrying officials in ceremonial robes. The Council members were known for their rigidity, their insistence on rules, and their unyielding belief in caution over risk. They entered the outpost with expressions of suspicion and authority. Lyra greeted them, keeping her tone measured. Welcome. I will explain what is happening, but I ask for patience. The energy surges are a new phenomenon, and they are not dangerous. The Council leader, a tall Vorathan with pale blue skin and sharp golden eyes, frowned. New phenomenon. Energy surges have affected multiple star systems. Entire communication channels have been disrupted. Our astronomers report anomalies we cannot explain. How do you account for this? Lyra took a deep breath. It began with the human. When I touched him, the stars responded. The energy pulses you see, they are linked to emotional resonance, to courage, to hope, to connection. It is not harmful. It is alive. The Council murmured among themselves, skepticism written clearly on their faces. You claim that touching a human caused this? One official asked sharply. That a single contact could influence the cosmos? Yes, Lyra said firmly. I know it sounds impossible, but it is true. The nebula, the stars, the energy, they respond to connection. This is a natural phenomenon, but it is triggered by something very subtle, the bond between beings of different species. The Council leader's expression darkened. You risked your life and broke sacred laws. You could have caused untold destruction. Lyra met his gaze. I risked nothing destructive. I saved a life, and the universe responded positively. I have records, data, and observations to prove it. She turned to Jace. We have worked together for days. Please, help me show them. Jace nodded. Though he was an outsider, he understood the importance of this moment. He activated his portable device, projecting holographic images of the nebula. The stars shifted in real time, vibrant patterns moving across the holographic projection. Energy flows traced the invisible currents, highlighting the pathways influenced by their connection. The Council leaned forward, their eyes narrowing, scanning the projections. Lyra continued. See how the energy moves? It responds to our presence, our emotions, our choices. It is not random. It is guided by connection. We can use this understanding to stabilize star routes, improve communication, and even expand safe travel across multiple systems. Some Council members were intrigued while others remained suspicious. This is highly unusual, one murmured. It defies all previous understanding of cosmic laws. Yes, Lyra admitted. But the universe itself is not bound by our limited understanding. We are only beginning to comprehend what is possible when courage, hope, and empathy influence the cosmos." The council leader's eyes narrowed. "And yet, it began with a human. You suggest that their presence is beneficial? That a species we do not understand could alter the energy of entire star systems?" Jace stepped forward, his voice steady. "It is true. Humanity explores not to conquer, but to connect. We survive to share knowledge, to help others, to discover new possibilities. Our strength lies in hope, in perseverance, and in reaching out to others, even when the risks are high." Lyra watched as the council listened. Some members seemed unconvinced, their rigid adherence to tradition fighting against the evidence before them. Others, however, leaned forward, intrigued by the possibility that the universe could respond positively to empathy and courage. Days passed, and the energy surges continued to spread, yet no harm came to the nebula or the surrounding systems. The council began to study Lyra's data more carefully. They watched as the stars formed stable patterns, creating pathways of energy that could guide ships safely through turbulent regions. The patterns shifted with purpose, reacting to careful observation and subtle interaction between beings. Lyra and Jace worked together tirelessly. The human suggested new methods of observation, while Lyra applied her scientific expertise to verify the results. Slowly, they began to prove that the nebula's response was not random, but a consequence of emotional and cognitive resonance. One evening, Lyra and Jace sat together on the observation deck, the nebula glowing with golden spirals and violet streaks. "Do you think they will accept it?" Jace asked, watching the patterns ripple across the sky. Lyra sighed. "I do not know. Some will resist, clinging to fear and tradition. Others will see the potential. But we have shown them the truth. That is all we can do." Jace smiled faintly. "Humanity has a habit of taking risks for the sake of discovery. I think your people will understand eventually, especially when they see that the universe itself responded." Lyra nodded. She felt the pulse of his energy again, subtle but unmistakable. The connection between them had deepened over days of shared observation, discussion, and quiet reflection. It was no longer just about the touch. It was about understanding, trust, and shared curiosity. Suddenly, alarms rang across the outpost. Energy readings spiked dramatically, higher than ever before. The stars shifted violently, bright arcs streaking across the nebula in chaotic patterns. Lyra's heart raced. "What is happening?" she whispered. Jace moved to her side. "It is reacting to something new. Our presence, our attention, maybe even our emotions. The nebula is alive, and it responds." The council members arrived in a flurry, their previous skepticism replaced by alarm. "Contain it!" one shouted. "We cannot allow uncontrolled energy surges." Lyra held up her hand. "Wait! It is not dangerous. If you act hastily, you will disrupt the balance. The nebula is reacting positively. It responds to calm, to focus, to cooperation." The council hesitated, uncertain. Lyra turned to Jace. "We need to show them, guide them, let them understand the connection, not fear it." Jace nodded. Together they demonstrated controlled interaction with the nebula. They moved slowly, deliberately, showing how their combined attention and cooperation stabilized the energy flows. Gradually, the violent surges calmed, the stars returning to harmonious patterns. The council watched in awe. Some could not deny what they saw. The universe itself had responded to understanding, to empathy, and to the courage of a single human and a Vorathan who dared to break tradition. The council leader finally spoke, his voice quieter, tinged with wonder. "Perhaps we have misunderstood. Perhaps the laws we clung to were not meant to limit connection, but to caution ignorance." Lyra bowed slightly, her heart pounding. Yes, connection is not dangerous. It is powerful. And when guided wisely, it can benefit all. The human smiled at her. Then we've done more than observe the stars. We've shown them a new way to see the universe. The council members began to discuss among themselves. The tension in the room eased slightly as curiosity and hope replaced fear. The energy surges continued, but now they were stable, forming beautiful bridges of light across the nebula. The stars had shifted permanently in subtle ways, reflecting a new order, a universe influenced by courage, empathy, and connection. That night, Lyra and Jace stood together on the observation deck, gazing at the glowing sky. The nebula pulsed softly, a rhythm that seemed to echo the bond between them. "Do you feel it?" Lyra asked. Jace nodded. "I do. It is not just the stars, it is us, our connection, and it has changed everything." Lyra smiled faintly. "Then perhaps the future is not something we fear, but something we can shape. Together." The human reached out, and this time, their hands met openly, without fear or hesitation. The stars above shimmered once more, a faint ripple traveling across the nebula, as if the universe itself acknowledged their choice. For the first time, Lyra realized that the bond between species, between human and Vorathon, was not only possible, but transformative. It could guide civilizations, shape energy flows, and inspire hope across the stars. And as the nebula glowed with golden and violet patterns, she knew one truth with certainty. Humanity's courage, their willingness to connect, had awakened something in the universe that no law could ever contain. The stars had changed. The council had begun to understand, and the bond between a human and a Vorathan had shown that connection could transcend fear, tradition, and even the vastness of space itself. It was only the beginning. The nebula glowed brighter than ever before, a river of violet and gold stretching across the sky, forming patterns that seemed alive. Lyra stood on the observation deck, her hand still resting lightly on Jace's. The energy pulses had stabilized, flowing gracefully through the stars, like invisible bridges connecting distant systems. It was beautiful, almost sacred, and it filled her with a sense of hope she had never known. The Vorathan Council had returned, this time with less suspicion and more curiosity. They had spent days reviewing the data, observing the energy patterns, and witnessing the connection between Lyra and the human. Slowly, their fear had been replaced with wonder. Some members still hesitated, unwilling to fully embrace the unknown, but the majority began to see the possibilities. The council leader, his pale blue skin gleaming under the nebula's light, approached Lyra and Jace. "What you have shown us is remarkable. We cannot deny the truth of what we have seen. This energy, this connection, changes the way we understand the universe. It is neither dangerous nor random. It is alive, and it responds to life." Lyra bowed slightly. "Yes, it responds to courage, empathy, hope, and understanding. The universe itself is influenced by connection." Jace stepped forward. "And this is why humanity explores. We do not seek to dominate or destroy. We seek to understand, to connect, and to help. When we reach out, the universe responds. We do not claim to control it. We work with it." The council murmured among themselves, some nodding slowly as the meaning sank in. They had always believed that knowledge and control were separate from emotion, but now they were beginning to see that emotion could shape reality in profound ways. Lyra felt a surge of pride and relief. Together, she and Jace had done more than survive a crash or stabilize an outpost. They had demonstrated the power of trust, understanding, and connection across species. Outside, the nebula pulsed in gentle waves, forming pathways that stretched like bridges through the cosmic clouds. Ships from both Vorathon and human fleets observed from a distance, cautiously approaching the newly stabilized corridors. These energy paths promised faster travel and safer passage through regions that had once been considered too dangerous for explorers. The council leader raised his voice so all present could hear. The laws that forbade contact with other species. They were based on fear of the unknown. But the unknown is no longer a threat. It is an opportunity. We will form a new alliance with humanity, and together we will explore, study, and understand the universe in ways we could never achieve alone. Lyra glanced at Jace, and he smiled, a mixture of relief and joy. Humanity had often faced fear and misunderstanding in the cosmos, yet they had persevered. They had always believed in connection, and now that belief was recognized even by the most cautious alien council. Preparations began immediately. Communication channels were opened between the Vorathan and human fleets. Scholars, scientists, and explorers from both species exchanged data, ideas, and observations. The nebula's energy patterns became a living laboratory, a symbol of cooperation and shared discovery. Lyra led the first joint research mission, with Jace as her partner. Their task was to map the energy bridges, to understand how emotional resonance could guide star routes and stabilize cosmic currents. Each movement, each careful experiment, produced visible ripples in the nebula, as if the universe itself were observing and responding to their work. During one observation session, Jace placed his hand lightly on Lyra's arm, not out of necessity, but as a gesture of solidarity. Immediately, a pulse of golden energy swept across the nebula, connecting distant stars in a dazzling display. Lyra's eyes widened. It is reacting to trust, to unity, not just touch, but understanding. Jace nodded. That is humanity's gift. We do not act alone. We act together, with empathy and care, and the universe responds. Word of their discoveries spread quickly. Other species in neighboring systems began to take notice, sending envoys and observation vessels to witness the nebula's transformation. Some came in fear, some in curiosity, but all left with awe. In the council chambers, debates arose about the potential of these energy bridges. Could this power be used for warfare? One Vorathan scholar asked, his tone cautious. Jace shook his head firmly. Not if we act wisely. This energy responds to emotion, to intention. Fear and aggression may cause temporary instability, but cooperation, trust, and understanding strengthen the flow. It is not a weapon. It is a guide, a path for growth and connection. Lyra added, we must teach others to respect it, to use it for exploration, not conflict, to understand, not dominate. The energy is alive, but it is not ours to control. It responds to harmony. The council, once rigid and fearful, began to shift in understanding. Protocols were rewritten, policies adapted, and a new philosophy emerged, one that combined Vorathan discipline with human curiosity and empathy. The alliance became a model of cooperation, demonstrating that differences could create strength rather than conflict. Months passed, and the energy bridges expanded. Starships traveled through the nebula with ease, guided by subtle pulses that seemed to anticipate their movements. Trade, communication, and research flourished. Systems that had been isolated due to dangerous cosmic turbulence were now connected, forming a network that spanned light years. Lyra and Jace became symbols of this new era. Their partnership, born from a moment of courage and a single touch, had reshaped the universe in ways neither could have imagined. They were invited to speak before councils, academies, and gatherings across multiple species, sharing their discoveries and their experiences. One evening, as they stood together on the observation deck, the nebula glowing softly beneath them, Jace spoke quietly. Do you remember the first touch? How everything changed? Lyra nodded, her silver hair catching the starlight. I remember. I was terrified, and yet I felt something extraordinary. I felt a connection that defied everything I had been taught. He smiled, reaching out again. Their hands met, this time openly, freely, without fear. The stars pulsed gently, a soft ripple of color echoing across the nebula. It is beautiful, Lyra whispered. Not just the stars, but everything. The universe, our bond. The possibility of what can happen when we trust and understand each other. Jace nodded. That is humanity's way. We reach out, even when we are unsure, because we know that connection is more powerful than fear. Lyra looked at the nebula, watching as energy patterns formed bridges connecting distant star systems. Then perhaps the universe itself understands. Perhaps it has always been waiting for us to act with courage and empathy. Jace's smile widened. And now we can guide others. Teach them that connection, hope, and understanding can shape reality itself. As they stood together, the nebula shimmered with renewed brilliance. Ships traveled along the energy bridges, explorers charted new systems, and scholars from multiple species studied the patterns. The universe seemed to pulse with life, responding to the combined courage and empathy of those who dared to reach out. In the council chambers, the Vorathan leader spoke once more, his voice filled with pride. We have witnessed something extraordinary. A single act of courage, a single choice to connect, has reshaped the stars. Let this be a lesson to all. The universe is not merely a place to survive. It is a place to understand, to explore, and to grow together. Lyra and Jace exchanged a glance, understanding that this moment would be remembered for generations. They had started as individuals, separated by species and custom, but their connection had sparked a transformation that extended far beyond themselves. One evening, after a long day of observation, Lyra looked at the stars above and realized that the patterns were no longer random. They formed paths, bridges, and even shapes that seemed to tell a story of hope, courage, and unity. She felt a gentle pulse in her hand as Jace reached for hers again. This is only the beginning, he said softly. The universe is vast, and there is so much more to discover. Together we can help guide it, and guide others, without fear. Lyra nodded, feeling the truth of his words. She thought of all the species that would come to the nebula, of all the explorers who would travel safely along these energy bridges, and of the countless lives that would benefit from the simple act of connection that had begun so long ago. The nebula glowed, alive with energy and possibility, a reflection of the courage and empathy that had shaped it. The stars had changed color, yes, but more importantly, the universe itself had shifted toward understanding, toward unity, toward hope. Lyra and Jace stood together on the observation deck, hands intertwined, hearts aligned, gazing at the cosmos that had responded to their bond. The stars pulsed softly, acknowledging the choice, the courage, and the connection that had sparked a new era. And as they looked out over the glowing nebula, one simple truth became clear. A single touch had changed the stars, but understanding, trust, and empathy had changed the future. The universe had opened itself to possibility, and humanity and Lyra would be its guides. The stars shimmered in endless colors, a testament to what could happen when beings dared to connect across the vastness of space. The nebula's energy flowed like rivers of light, carrying hope, courage, and unity across systems that had once been distant and isolated. And as the Vorathan and human fleets traveled along the newly formed paths, the legacy of that first touch endured. Every explorer, every observer, and every life touched by the nebula's energy knew that connection could change worlds, reshape galaxies, and transform the very fabric of the universe. Lyra looked at Jace, their hands still clasped. "We did not just save a life," she whispered. "We changed everything." He nodded, smiling. "Yes, and now, the stars themselves will remind everyone that connection, courage, and understanding can shape the universe." Above them, the nebula shimmered in colors never seen before, a living testament to the power of hope, empathy, and the bond between human and Vorathan. The stars had changed, and so had the future, and this time it was permanent.